Hey everybody, welcome to another week of the Premier Life Podcast. This is Dr. Nate, and this is
Dr. Emily.
coming at you with a hot topic this week, talking about birth control and really how it's affecting so many women's lives that are coming into the clinic. And I know that's such a deep topic nowadays. I know that it affects so many different women. I know it's affected your life, Dr. Emily. And I know that it's something that's really just covering up the symptoms, right? And we know that every single person, walking around, breathing, they have the capacity to heal. They have the capacity to function. They have a capacity to make an impact on other people's lives around them. And so ultimately, we want to help people address the root cause of really, why they needed to take that birth control in the first place. Mm-hmm. And, for a lot of women nowadays, they're not necessarily taking birth control because of family planning reasons. Mainly it's because, when you ask them like, hey, how's it going with the cycle? Usually the response you'll get is it's horrible. And jump into you, Dr. M. Would you mind just sharing your story of how, oral contraceptives and birth control has really affected you?
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Nate brought up some great points there. And like a lot of female stories, when I was in my teenage years, around in my early 20s, I had terrible cramps, so debilitating to the point where, I was laying on the floor in the fetal position and just really trying to get through those cramps each cycle. I had terrible acne, and I was also vomiting during each cycle. And so, I know that's a lot of women's stories, unfortunately. And so just like most women at that age, I did what I knew best, and I went to my medical doctor, and that's where, they gave me the option of the pill. And they said, this should basically get rid of all those symptoms for you, and you should be good to go. They never brought up my diet, anything like that. And so I was on the pill for actually only, I think, a couple years. I know some women are on it for decades, but I was on it for a couple years, and it actually wasn't until I got to this office here at Premier, because if you don't know, this is my husband, Dr. Nate here, and we moved from Arizona over here to Indiana, and Nate was a CA at this office for about a year, and then we both went to chiropractic school, and like I said, it wasn't until I got to this office that I really discovered what my body was capable of and what God designed me to do.
Amen. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also a point to where they put you on Accutane, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a acne medication that has such severe side effects.
Black box warning and everything.
That a lot of women nowadays, they're kind of pushed into a corner where they tell them like, hey, you have to take oral contraceptives while you're on this drug. Because if you have kids while you're on this drug, you're going to end up with high risks of genetic deformities on your kids that you have. So I mean, it's crazy how these women are essentially pushed into a box, and Emily's story is not unique. There's so many women out there that are struggling where they have an immensely painful cycle. They're having to miss out on work. They're having to sit on the sideline when it comes to being a mom. And so ultimately, again, we want to make sure that we're addressing the root cause to where we're not putting Band-Aids over, serious things that are happening underlying the surface, right? And so, when it comes to a normal female cycle, it's crazy what you can see is that, when you look at a chart, where you have these 4 critical hormones, where you're looking at something called follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, luteinizing hormone, which is LH, progesterone, and estrogen. You have all these hills and valleys, all these changes throughout the month that are really controlling women's physiology and performing these critical roles. And then when you're on the pill, what happens is these hormones start to flatline, where you're having these no changes, no fluctuations in hormones throughout the month. You're just having these straight estrogen levels that are high, and then you also have progestins, which aren't even progesterone. It's completely different. The progestins are really inflammatory in nature, and they're not really serving you well when you're taking them orally. So they end up creating more problems than they're even solving in the first place, right? And so this is something, again, that's so critical for women to be able to take control of their lives, to take control of their fertility, and really control, their family's health going on into the future,
Yeah.
right? So Dr. M and I are going to go through 5 things that you guys can do that are super simple that are going to completely change and transform your cycle and the health that surrounds it.
Yeah. So number one, what we really want to do is eat a big breakfast, and we really want that breakfast to just be very nutrient dense. And so by that, like, especially as females, we want to get at least probably 25 to 30 grams of protein for each breakfast. And so some really easy ways to do that, are eating eggs. If you eat meat, lots of meat, and just those are really quick, easy ways to get a lot of protein. I feel like with each meal, that's what I always do. And the reason why we really want to get a super big breakfast in the morning before we, have those 4 cups of coffee and oh wait.
That's actually a really excellent point, because like when you eat a big breakfast, you have this hormone called leptin, right? And leptin controls the satiety, right? Or the feeling of fullness after, sustaining your metabolic health. And leptin is so critical for the rest of the hormones. It actually, when women have eggs that are selected to go through the cycle, leptin is actually responsible for choosing those eggs that are, putting the best foot forward for your family. And so it really ties in really well to progesterone levels. It ties in really well to estrogen levels, the LH, the FSH. And so having a really excellent leptin sensitivity is really critical for maintaining that for fertility and that reproductive health. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to talk about the second one we got?
Yeah, so then number 2 is maintaining our neurological balance. And so most of the listeners here are probably familiar with that. That means, getting your nervous system frequently checked. And so getting those regular adjustments, because as we all know, our hormones, they work as a symphony in our body. Our nervous system controls every organ, cell, and tissue, and that, reaches out to all of our hormones. And so that's why it's so crucial to get our nervous system checked and balanced. That way our body can fully function like God intended it to do.
That's so good. Yeah. And so when you come into our office, like you might have had this test already. It's called a heart rate variability test, or it's a HRV. And so when you look at these tests, you have 2 different sides. You have on the left side, you have essentially what's called the gas pedal or the sympathetic dominant side. And then on the right side, you have parasympathetic or the brake pedal rest and digest side of the nervous system, right? Now, typically what we want to see where women to be is high and tight right in the middle, right? You want to be able to shift from the gas pedal to the brake pedal, and whatever challenges you face, you want your nervous system to adapt well to those environmental stimuli, right? Now, for women nowadays, what we typically find is that women will either be way far on the sympathetic dominant side where they're stressed out. You have kids that are likely running around driving you nuts. You might have really stressful work. You might have a stressful home life. And so this is actually going to really impact your hormone balance, right? And so what a lot of women can end up with is something called pregnenolone steal syndrome, where you're taking this base resource, this base hormone, and you're going to shunt it down to create stress hormones rather than the sex hormones like progesterone, LH, and FSH, and estrogen. And you're shifting those away from being produced to things like cortisol and things like, epinephrine and things like that. And so it is so crucial to maintain low stress in the nervous system to have these healthy cycles. That's so good.
Yeah, definitely. And then that brings us to point number 3. So this is checking your basal temperature right as soon as you wake up in the morning. And the reason that checking your basal temperature is so crucial is because this is a good indicator of how well your thyroid is functioning. And so an easy way to do this is you can just get a basal thermometer, old school, just pop it in your mouth and take your temperature early in the morning. And you could either jot it down on your notes or just write it down. And that way works. But a really convenient, super easy way that I do is I use my Oura Ring. So Oura Ring is super nice. And then I sync it up to this app called Natural Cycles. And it actually, all I have to do is sync my Oura Ring and then open up the Natural Cycles app, and it automatically will take my basal temperature over to the app, and it'll give me the whole algorithm and tell me exactly, how my temperatures have been going for as long as I've been taking it.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Yeah. And, really when you look at the thyroid, and this also ties back into leptin as well. Leptin is really like the percent battery on your phone, right? It's a feedback to your brain that says, how much energy do I actually have in my body? And the thyroid is actually the charger of your battery, right? You want to be able to, reset that battery to be able to recharge. And so if you are in low power mode with your leptin, right, you're not getting enough energy in your system, and B, you're not recharging your system with thyroid where you're putting that, more and more metabolic, you're getting more metabolic energy through. If you have those two combined, your body's not gonna prioritize reproduction. It's gonna prioritize survival in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're having low thyroid and you're having poor leptin sensitivity, you're gonna have reproductive issues, right? And so this is the pitfall that a lot of women fall into, is that they don't check their leptin, they don't check their thyroid. So you may be thinking like, hey, I'm the person that is constantly hungry, right? B, you might be the person that is chronically cold, right? You're the person that walks around maybe in the spring or summer and you have the blanket on at home, right? And you're constantly cold, and you might have cold hands. So, again, if your temperature is below 98.0 in the morning when you wake up, this is a strong indicator that your thyroid needs some love and attention, right? And if you're constantly hungry, this is a sign that your leptin sensitivity needs some, again, love and attention, to where we can address that and start to address the root cause of why you're having these cyclical issues. Yeah. Now, when we talk about birth control, specifically coming off of the pill, when you take birth control, there's 4 different vitamins that are vital to necessary health that are drained out of your system when you're chronically taking these pills. And so number 1 is vitamin C. Vitamin C is your body's primary antioxidant. And it's actually really important that you guys get this from whole foods, because when you take the synthetic form of vitamin C, it's not the same as taking it, from like eating an orange versus taking a pill, or even eating a bell pepper, But by the way, if you guys do eat bell peppers, this is a little side note here, but red bell peppers are actually always the better ones to choose. If you look at the green bell peppers, those are actually unripe bell peppers. If you leave bell peppers on the plant for a longer period of time, they'll turn from green to yellow to orange to red. And so if you let the bell pepper ripen, it actually makes more bioavailable vitamin C, which is an excellent antioxidant. And then also zinc. Zinc is really important in the creation of the sex steroid hormones like progesterone and estrogen, and the other hormones that facilitate fertility. And so zinc is something that you want to catch up on. Yeah. What are some of the other ones you got?
Yeah, and then definitely all the B vitamins, those really get depleted when we're on the pill. And so, for example, like your B6, that one really helps your hormones overall. But, kind of what Dr. Nate was saying, it really helps support your progesterone. Mm-hmm. And so super easy way to get B vitamins is to take organs. So like beef organs, like kidney organs, all those things. And the easiest way to take that is in a supplement form. And so the reason that those are so convenient and just nice is because that is the most nutrient dense supplement out there on the planet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and really, most people whenever we have a practice member coming in and we say, hey, you should take some beef organs, and they're like, you mean I should eat like liver and onions? And we're like, I mean, unless you like it, not many people like it nowadays. So they'll prefer just to take the capsule desiccated form. And so that's an excellent source, again, for not just vitamins and minerals, but also even peptides and great essential nutrients that your body needs to fight the chaos that's created from these pills. Yeah. The last thing that we want to look at is also eliminating endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so you might have heard these, you might have heard of like phthalates, you might have heard of parabens. Mm-hmm. Most cosmetics nowadays and most companies are looking into these chemicals as really considerable dangerous things, that are really coming into our systems. And so a lot of the chemicals, or a lot of even the shampoos and the cosmetics, you'll see
makeup, women's makeup.
Yeah, women's makeup. Yeah, absolutely. You'll see that they'll have paraben free, phthalate free. Those are the things that you want to prioritize. Also, alcohol is a significant endocrine disruptor when it comes to cycles. So if you do have issues with your cycles, try to stay as alcohol free as possible. And then also synthetic fragrances. An easy switch for synthetic fragrances is to simply make the step towards essential oils. Yeah. That you can use a carrier oil like coconut oil. Throw in some clove, and you'll be smelling great. Yeah. and not have to worry about the endocrine disrupting effect of those synthetic perfumes.
Yeah, and then so like a super easy way to check all of those things, especially when you're at the grocery store, and it can be so overwhelming when you're looking at products and you see just a whole list of ingredients on there and you're like, what are half of these even saying? Like, are these even in English? And so super easy, convenient thing to do is pull up a couple different apps. So like Think Dirty is really great, or even Yuka, Yuka. Those are really great because they just tell you exactly the ingredients, and they'll tell you, what they are, and just basically break that all down for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and so Yuka is Yuka. You can find that on the App Store, and then Think Dirty, one word. Those are excellent. Even EWG is also another one, the Environmental Working Group. They have an app too that you can scan barcodes. It's such an invaluable resource. I know that was for us that when we're trying to navigate, what's good for you and what's not.
What not to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are our 5 things that you need to do to, start to look at to really reset your cycle. And so, again, like Emily's story is not unique. There's so many women out there that are suffering with their cycle, that need help, that are looking for help. It might be your daughter, it might be your wife, it might be your mom, it might be your neighbor, it might be your classmate or your worker, or employee, or even somebody in your church group that is really suffering every month, and so really, like, we have an excellent opportunity for people to come in for a first opportunity to really look at their health and to see where they're at, and really to help them navigate what the healing capacity and healing journey is going to look like. And so we have this food drive that's coming up this next week, where you simply bring in a can of food, and that covers your initial cost for care, really for x-rays, for scans, for a consultation, where we sit down and really identify those root causes that's really inhibiting you from living the life that you want to live. And so that's an excellent opportunity to bring in your friends, bring your neighbors, bring your church friends, really anyone that's suffering, that needs this help. And so, thank you guys so much for listening today. Hopefully this was life-changing. Thank you, Dr. Emily, for coming in, and sharing your experience. I know it can be hard, to tell that story sometimes, but I think that people really need to hear it, so that they can connect, and see that things can change. And so, again, thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you guys next week on the Premier Life Podcast.